Good morning. Let's see. Okay, so we will begin this morning as usual with the short Vajra prayer, followed by the mandala offering, the short mandala offering. And so yesterday I said a few things about the mandala offering, so I thought today would be a good idea to say a couple things about the Vajradhara lineage prayer. Trungpa Rinpoche had a custom of talking about it, usually once during each teaching, before we begin, because it's important when we start reciting, it's important for us to understand what we're doing, why we're reciting the text that we're reciting. And so sometimes Rinpoche would speak about the greatness of the author, Pengar Champo Sampo, or sometimes he would speak a little bit about the meaning of the text itself. So let's talk about Pengar Champo Sampo. Champo Sampo of Pengar. Pengar is the name of the region that he came from. So sometimes when we were doing this translation that is in here, we discussed whether we should follow the Tibetan order of saying Pengar Champo Sampo, or whether we should do Champo Sampo of Pengar, which is how we'd say it in English. You'd say, the person from, Champo, person of or from someplace. So I think in the text we wrote it down as Pengar Champo Sampo of Pengar, but everyone in Tibetan calls it the other way around. So it's really the same person, whatever order you say. Pengar is where he's from. He was a student of the 6th Karmapa Tongwa Dunden, and a teacher of the 7th Karmapa Churai Gyatso. So that means that he lived in the late 14th, early 15th century. I'm not looking at his dates, but just based on the dates of the 7th Karmapa, that would be, the 7th Karmapa was he was born in 1407, I believe. Am I right? It's up there. Anyways. This, you see, when you just sort of sit down and start talking without really preparing. Anyways, it's back then. So Pengar Champo Sampo received all the instructions on the Mahamudra, the 6 yogas, and everything else from the 6th Karmapa Tongwa Dunden. And after the 6th Karmapa passed away, he then went to spend some time meditating at a lake in northern Tibet called Semodo, Chang Semodo. It's in the northern part. Actually, no, the Chang Namso, and there's an island in the middle of it called Semodo. And there are lots of stories. If any of you have read The Rain of Wisdom, if you haven't read it, it's a good text to read. They're the story of like some lamas, Dingjerepa, who spent some time on this island. And the thing about this island is it's in the middle of this large lake. And Tibet is, what do we say? They are not a seafaring nation. They did not have a lot of technology. What they had were leather coracles, where you have a frame made out of wood and cover it with leather to make a boat. And so these were not terribly stable boats. And as a result, you couldn't really go all the way across the big ocean or big lake in them very easily. It's kind of unsafe. So the way to get to this island was to cross it in the winter when it froze. And then you'd go out there, it'd be frozen for a few months, you'd go out there, bring the supplies you needed for the year, and then in the spring the ice would melt and you would be free from distractions for several months, 8 or 9 months. However long it takes between the lake freezing again. I mean, I'm not sure how, it's a big lake, so I don't know how long it took for it to fully freeze over. But anyways, so there's a large part of the year where no one could go. And so, like for some people who did retreats out there, like Lingjirepa, there were several years in a row where the lake did not freeze, and he had great difficulties. But Pengar Jambal Zambo didn't have any of these problems. And he was able to meditate there and practice Mahamudra. And so the Vajradhara lineage, the short Vajradhara prayer, is a kind of like a distillation of the essence of his teachings. So it begins with a supplication to the gurus. The reason to supplicate the gurus is because this is where we get the teaching from. And it's by having, then the more devotion and faith that we have in the gurus, as we'll speak a little bit about this afternoon, the more devotion and faith we have, the more likely we are to actually practice and do something, because it'll mean more to us because we have that strength of devotion. And also when we do practice, then the nature of faith and devotion is that it makes your mind really clear. And so when you have strong devotion, it's easier to really see what's happening in your mind, what your mind is like. It's easier to see your mind when you have the strength of really powerful devotion. So that's why we supplicate the gurus. And then the next four stanzas give instructions on what we need. We need to have revulsion as the legs of meditation. If you don't feel revolted by samsara, then you'll never get very far. You have to realize that the things of this world are of no benefit at all, and really have the wish. Like Khenpo was saying at the very beginning, understanding that the depth of the suffering of samsara, the long duration of the suffering, the severity of that suffering. If you don't realize that and want to get out of it, if you don't have that revulsion, you're not going to get very far in your meditation. You won't have legs. And then, if we're going to go someplace in meditation, we need to be able to know where we're going. So we need our eyes, the head, that's where the eyes are. And so you need your eyes to see where you're going. So you need to have devotion. That's the way Khenpo Thabu describes that verse, basically, that, if you have a head, you have eyes, you can tell where you're going. You have eyes and ears, you can see where you're going. No head, you can't see. Trungpa Rinpoche would always describe this verse as, you might think that devotion is an unimportant kind of minor quality in meditation, but it's not. It's just like if you have a body with no head, the body seems small, so it should be less important than the rest of your body. But without this kind of small head, the large body can't see, can't hear, can't smell, can't do anything. So similarly, without devotion, you won't be able to make any progress in your meditation. So it's a kind of different explanation, but it's the same thing without devotion. It's devotion that directs you in your meditation. And then the third verse is about shamatha, but not just any shamatha. This is the shamatha of Mahamudra, where you rest non-distracted. The main thing about meditating is not that you need to do something with your mind. It's just that you need to rest with your mind however it is without getting distracted. And so this talks about, that verse speaks about that, and I won't go into it too much. And then the fourth verse, I'll go even less. This talks about the insight of Mahamudra, realizing that the nature of all thoughts is Dharmakaya. So the mind essence itself, the co-emergent mind essence itself is Dharmakaya. The light of the Dharmakaya is like the clarity of the mind is like the light of the Dharmakaya, and so forth. And then finally, there is a verse, to pray to never be separate from the perfect Guru in all our lives, because we don't know how long we're going to be in this lifetime. And if in this lifetime we don't give ourselves some sort of direction of where we want to be next time around, who knows? If you make an aspiration, say, I want to be born in an environment where I can practice the Dharma, where I'll be close to my teacher, where I'll be whoever you feel is your teacher, that next time around I'm going to be in that environment, then you have a much, much better chance of actually going there, because you're kind of, that aspiration is giving you impetus to move in that direction. If you don't make that sort of aspiration, you could end up just about anywhere, and then, it's unclear whether there'll be any chance again, what will happen next. So it's really important to make that aspiration to be born in the presence of your Guru, that's in particular, in general, to be born in an environment where you can practice the Dharma. I mean, you could be reborn in a place where you have everything you need. You could be reborn as a god in the God's realm. And you'd be fine for a few million years. And then when the life ends, it's said that this ending of the life, at the last few days of a god's life, the suffering in that period is 16 times greater than the suffering in the worst of the hell realms, the psychological suffering of knowing that you have wasted a long life and knowing where you're going to fall next. So we don't want to be in that position, so we need to make the aspiration. So in that very last verse, although Rinpoche didn't speak about it so much, it is an important verse to say, think, I want to be born in a place, in a situation where I'm in contact with someone who can teach me the Dharma, who can help me the next time around, because who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? And so right now, while we are practicing, one of the main things we need to practice for is to be ready for that moment of death that could come any time. Any time. It could come tonight. It could come tomorrow. It could come in 10 years, it could come in 20 years, but we don't know when. And so we need to make the aspirations now while we're still able. Otherwise, if we're not prepared at the time when, if we haven't prepared ourselves now, we won't have much of a chance at the moment of death. So it's really important to make such aspirations now. So we will now recite after that cheery note, let's please recite the aspiration, or the Vajradhara lineage, the short Vajradhara prayer. I always say Vajradhara lineage prayer. We had such a discussion when we were doing this translation. Should we call it the short Vajradhara prayer or the Vajradhara lineage prayer? Is it really a lineage prayer we discussed? And then if we say if it's a short Vajradhara prayer, is there a tall Vajradhara who might be able to? We settled on short Vajradhara because it is closer to the Tibetan title, but actually the Tibetan title is just taking the first couple lines of the first couple words. This is the way Tibetans name many prayers. When there's not a specific title, they just call it after the first few words, and then they put the word ma on the end. So it's the Dorje Chang Tung Ma. So this Dorje Chang is the first words. Then Tung, it means short, because there's another longer one. So it's the short Vajradhara prayer. Okay, the short prayer whose first word is Vajradhara in Tibetan. Okay, so let's sing it in English. Mongre Vajradhara te lonaramar bamilarempa the Dharma Lord Khenpo Banowara 3 times karma and lineage holders of the elder 4 and younger 8 the Trigun Taglun Salba glorious Tropa and so forth protectors of all beings, the unequal Tapokaju, who have gained mastery of the profound path Mahamudra. O Kaju Gurus, heed my prayer, your lineage I uphold. Please bless me so I may adopt your ways of liberation. Just as revulsions taught to be the legs of meditation, this meditator does not cling to any food or wealth, and severs all the ties that bind me to this present life. Please bless me to be unattached to honor or to gain. Just as devotion's taught to be the head of meditation, continually this meditator supplicates the Guru, who opens up the doorway to the trove of fifth instructions. Please bless me this that uncontrived devotion may well forth, as non-distractions taught to be the core of meditation. This meditator just remains, not altering at all the fresh and pristine essence of whatever thought occurs. Please bless me to be free from thinking there's a meditation, just as it's taught the essence of all thoughts is Dharmakaya, not anything at all, and yet arising in all ways, appearing for this meditator in unceasing play. Bless me to know samsara and nirvana are not doomed. In all my future lifetimes may I never be apart from the authentic Gurus and embrace the Dharma's glory. May I perfect the qualities of all the paths and levels, and may I swiftly realize the state of Vajra. So please turn to the mandala offering. I dedicate to enlightenment whatever slight merit I have gathered from prostrating and offering, confessing and rejoicing, requesting and from making supplications. This earth perfumed with scented water, strewn with flowers, graced with Mount Meru, the four lands, the sun and moon, I visualize to be a Buddha, so that all beings enjoy a perfectly pure. Please turn the wheel of Dharma, of the great foundation and calm and vehicles, according to the specific aims and intellects of sentient beings. Omen Chiji Purane Dosu Sanji Kunji Ngwani Rasan Chuko Ngosu Tunzeba. Padana Mada Bala Jaza Lidon Loji Iki Trubai Treba Kunji Chijin Shirga Jiparji Nya Hangela Shimasu. Dibajan, the Jimmy Dog, Kiva Kunajer, Jan Jogging, Judy Moraji, Yakamita Shumbraso, the Tejalami Jogo, Jana Jumada, Donald Jibbe, Yahasejan, and Gitapadar. Talking was on the Margin, Virginia, Kuzum and Vejar Glorious, precious root Guru, please sit above my crown on a lotus moon seat. Care for me with great kindness and grant the siddhis of body, speech, and mind. In the Dharma expanse palace of Akanishta is the essence of all Buddhas of the three times, who shows me directly my mind is Dharmakaya. I prostrate to the glorious exalted Gurus. Please bless me and all beings that our minds become the Dharma. Please bless us that the Dharma become the path. Please bless us that the path dispel confusion. Please bless us that confusion arise as wisdom. Now please think to yourselves that we must, no matter what, bring all of our mothers, all sentient beings throughout space to the state of completely perfect Buddhahood. And in order to do this, we must listen to and contemplate the Dharma. And with this motivation of bodhicitta, please listen to the Dharma this morning. The Dharma that we are listening to is the ornament of precious realization, the wish-fulfilling jewel of true Dharma, by the Lord Gampopa Sunam Rinchen, Takpo Rinpoche. And in this work, after the prologue, there is the general division, the topics, the cause, the support, the conditions, the method, and the result, and the activity. So these are the six. And so of these four, yesterday we spoke about the cause, Buddha nature. So with the cause, Buddha nature, it's, as I said yesterday, it's difficult to, it's easy to understand intellectually, it's difficult to understand, to really know, to have confidence in. It's difficult to, so it takes a long time. So there are the three reasons that we spoke about yesterday, and it's really worth spending some time to think about what does it mean to say that we have Buddha nature because we are pervaded by the Dharmakaya emptiness. What does it mean to say that? What does it mean when we say that there are no distinctions in suchness, the nature of all things? What does it mean to say that all sentient beings have family? You really have to think about it, because the words, it's pretty easy to get facile with words and say them, but much harder to really get it to a point where you understand it. And because when it comes down to it, it's the point where you're in a difficult situation, where you need to have confidence that you have to have that. And so that only comes if you actually take the time to contemplate the teachings. Not only that, when you're talking about doing practice, you might start hearing about Mahamudra or Dzogchen or some other great meditation and want to do this great meditation. And yet for all of them, if you don't have confidence in teachings, and in particular in the meaning of Buddha nature and the meaning of emptiness, then your practice is never really going to get to any strong point. Because when you have the conviction, when you have the understanding that comes from listening and contemplating, then you have a basis. So that when you encounter something in practice, you can say, ah, this is it. I mean, to give kind of a funny, minor example of it, we'd been talking about, I've been spending years studying, talking about impermanence and everything like that, and thinking about this a lot. The meaning of impermanence is that everything is changing, nothing is stable, but you kind of still take it for granted. And then in 2015, in April of 2015, there was this huge earthquake in Nepal, and I was walking into the dining hall, and it started shaking around. It took me a while to figure out what was going on. And I was still not sure what was going on. I was walking over where I'm supposed to sit and thinking, why is everything wavering around? Then I realized, oh, this is an earthquake. And then I realized, the earth is not stable. The stability of the earth is not part of its nature. It's like, wow, this is so exciting. Fortunately, the dining hall did not collapse on us. That's because Trungpa Rinpoche thought ahead. And he made them, in all of the buildings he built in Nama Buddha, he made them put in far more reinforced steel than anyone else in Nepal ever thought necessary. They were all saying, why is he putting so much reinforcement in this concrete? So anyways, that's a side thing. But contemplating, and then when you get to a point where you've contemplated and you kind of know things intellectually, you believe it, then you have an experience and say, yes, this is it. In the same way, when you are meditating, if you have confidence in Buddha nature, then when you are meditating on the deity, you can have confidence. Like Wednesday nights, we have the deity practices. And when you do the deity practices, the reason why it's possible to do the deity practice is because the deity is not different than your own nature. When you're meditating on Chenrezig or on Medicine Buddha, your nature and Medicine Buddha's nature is the same because there's no distinction in the Dharmata, because the Dharmakaya pervades all. It's just a different expression of it in a sense on the relative level, but there's no different in essence. This is why we can meditate on the deity and why it's reasonable to do it. It's not just it's why, as Rinpoche Rinpoche wouldn't say it, I kind of paraphrasing, it's not making something up. It's not. On the one level, at the beginning, you do a visualization, and it's a little bit artificial because you are, in a sense, trying to see something that you're not. But on the other hand, it's not, because that's your own nature. You're visualizing your own nature in its pure form. And so this is why it's reasonable to do like deity practices like you do on the Wednesday nights. It's reasonable it's why it's reasonable to do the four ngundo, the four preliminary practices where you visualize the deities in front of you, and at the end of the practice to imagine the deities dissolving into you and so forth. That's why it's possible for all this to happen, why it's not just a psychological trick. I mean, there's a little bit of psychological, it's a lot, I'll admit that there is it's a method that uses psychological tricks, but the reason why the tricks work is because of what your nature is. So it's really important for us in our practice to have confidence in the cause. But then the question is, well, is that enough on its own? So here we've come to the second chapter. And I've already used up a lot of my time. I'm sorry about that. Anyways, so the second chapter begins by saying the basis is the supreme precious human body. So when we say this, well then that's repeating the general teaching. So what the actual chapter begins with, it begins like other chapters, like the previous chapter with, and many of the sections with a rhetorical question. Well then, if all sentient beings have Buddha nature, then are the hell beings, hungry ghosts, and so forth, all five of them, able to do they all have the capacity to achieve Buddhahood or not? So here it says, specifically it says, hells, hungry ghosts, and so forth. And then it says five. So sometimes we talk about 6 realms of samsara, sometimes we talk about 5. So when you talk about 5, you've got hells, hungry ghosts, animals, humans, and gods. When you talk about 6, you have hells, hungry ghosts, animals, humans, demigods, sometimes translated as jealous gods, and or asura, if they use a Sanskrit word, and then gods or devas. And so what happens when you talk about them as 5 is that the demigods can sometimes, because they're in a kind of, even though they're not as good as the gods, whom they're terribly envious of, they're still better off than humans in many ways, and so they can be included as part of the god realm. Or because they're kind of consumed by their jealousy, you can say that they're actually part of the hungry ghost realm. Okay, so there are two different explanations of that, but that's the difference. So the basically 5, as it says here, is when you're counting the 5, when you're counting the demigods, when you're not counting them separately. Okay, so the question is, does everyone have the power to achieve, is everyone able to achieve Buddhahood? The answer is no. Even though they have the family, even though they have Buddha nature, they're not able to do it. Now, this is, again, like with the severed family, this is temporary. It might be a long temporary, but it's temporary. It's just looking at the current condition. It's no. And then the text continues, the precious human body, the so-called precious human body, the body with both the leisures and resources, and the mind with the 3 types of faith, is the support for achieving Buddhahood, and this is an excellent type of individual, the excellent individual. So in order to awaken the Buddha nature, as I said yesterday morning, like if you have a seed, you can't just leave it in the envelope. It has to be in some sort of on some sort of a support where it can actually grow. Like for a seed, it would be in soil for most seeds. Some need to be in water. Whatever it needs to be in the appropriate sort for it to grow. Support for it to grow. Likewise, Buddha nature exists, sort of. There is Buddha nature and all. I'm not going to. Saying exist is too much of an ontological step. But there is Buddha nature in all sentient beings, but it's not necessarily able to become manifest on all support. So you have to have a good support, and that support is the precious human body with a leisure and resources, and also with a mind that has the 3 types of faith. So these are the 2 things. When we talk about it in the teachings on the Ngundra, we only talk about the precious human body. We don't talk about the 3 types of faith directly in the 4 ordinary foundations. The first of these is the meditation on the precious human body, where you meditate on the leisures and resources. But you don't think so much about faith. So here, in addition to the leisures and resources, you also have the 3 different types of faith. And so this is the support that we need. And the reason why this is so important is that we have to recognize how precious an opportunity we have to practice the Dharma now. And in any other sort of lifetime, any other sort of body, we wouldn't be able to have the opportunity to practice the Dharma the way we do now. So this is, and if you don't appreciate this, then you're going to run the danger of not actually using the body that we have. So it's really important for us to appreciate what an incredible opportunity we have with the precious human body, with its leisures and resources, and then a mind with the 3 types of faith. So this morning, unless I digress too many more times, we'll try to go through the leisures and resources, and then we'll speak about the 3 types of faith in the afternoon. And hopefully I'll get through everything without digressing too much. But to start with the leisures and resources, to go to the text, it says, to explain this in summary, we have the leisures and the resources, sincere longing and the faith of sincere longing and conviction, the 2 types of the body and the 2 for the body and the 3 of the mind. These five summarize the supreme support. Sorry, that was not the most elegant of transcriptions, but of translations. But we're basically, for the body, you have to have 2 things: the body with the leisures and the resources, and the mind with sincere faith, longing faith, and the faith of conviction. You have to have these 3 if you're going to be able to achieve. This is the supreme support that you have. So, we need to go through what all of these are. So we're going to start with the leisures and resources. So of those, the leisures, are being free of the 8 states that have no leisures. So the 8 states with the no leisure are, according to these sutra of the foundations of mindfulness, the hells, the hungry ghosts and animals, the barbarians, long-lived gods, those with wrong views, and places where there are no, places devoid of Buddhas, and the dumb are the 8 states with no leisure. So we've got 8 different states where there's no where you don't have the leisure. And what we mean by leisure here, Gampopa explains it here at the very beginning. It's a state where you don't have the time or the opportunity to practice the Dharma, just because of the body that you're in or whatever other circumstances around you, or you may even have a human body, but you're not in a state where you have the time to practice the Dharma. So it's like that's what we mean by leisure. You have the time and the ability to practice, the opportunity to practice Dharma. Often this is translated as freedoms, and this is also a good translation of it. It's perhaps actually a more common one. When I started out using the word leisure, and I got in the habit of using it because I was working on the Kaju Munlam, and they'd already chosen the word leisures for the leisures and resources instead of freedoms and resources, then I just got in the habit of saying it. So I'm not sure, so this is not something where I'm totally wedded to this word leisures. You can say freedoms also. But when you say leisures, it's also a little bit more specific to this. And so you might, I don't know. I don't need to go on too much about the translation issues. You can think of it as being leisure, or you can think about it as resources. It's just having the time and opportunity to practice the Dharma. Another way of thinking about it, I made some notes this morning, is that you are in a state where you are free of doing the negative actions that would prevent you from achieving Buddhahood. So that you have the leisure of being free of those actions, or freedom from those types of actions that prevent you from achieving Buddhahood. Because if you're born if you're born as an animal, what are you going to do? You're going to eat other animals, unless you're an herbivore. But you're going to run around and doing all sorts of things. If you're in the hungry ghosts or the hells, there's little chance for you to do anything but act on the afflictions and therefore to perform negative acts. Similarly with the animals, even herbivores are primarily acting upon their desires and their fears and aggression. If you look at rams or cows, they're always fighting. They're very aggressive. If you look bulls, I should say, bulls are very aggressive. So even just being an herbivore doesn't free you from being aggressive. So if you're free of that, that is having leisure. So that's what we mean by leisure. You have the opportunity to practice Dharma primarily because you're free of being occupied by the negative actions that would necessarily prevent you from practicing the Dharma. So among these, so then the text continues. So how are they a lack of leisure? Well, the hells are because they're a nature that is always suffering. In other words, the suffering's too extreme. You're just always experiencing suffering. You can't do it. The hungry ghosts are the hungry ghosts because because the nature is that their minds are always burning, literally burning, irritated or burning. When you look up what it says in like the sutras, and fortunately there's a bunch of materials Yao Karmapa put together when he was doing some research on it, so I was looking through those. Have been looking through those as in preparation. The sutras actually say, it's talking about you feel like they're so hungry and so thirsty that like their minds are always, like there's always this fire in their bodies and minds, the fire of hunger, the fire of thirst. You could also think of it as being like constantly irritated. Always irritated. You're so hungry that you're always irritated. They're always hangry. Okay. Yes. The animals are predominantly totally deluded. In other words, there are some animals that are very intelligent in some ways, but they don't have enough intelligence to be able to understand the Dharma. No matter how smart your dog is never going to be able to tell what's right from wrong, what is going to be helpful in terms of achieving liberation, what's not going to be helpful. They're just going to know what's going to keep you from yelling at them. right? And what's going to make you happy. And they're not thinking about it in terms of what's the appropriate thing to do so that I can achieve liberation. They don't have that intelligence, no matter how intelligent they are. And other types of animals, they have certain communicative abilities, but whether they have the ability to understand well enough to be able to know what should be done and what should be avoided. That's the primary thing. They don't have that degree of communicative ability and intelligence, so they're deluded. This is the traditional teaching. It doesn't mean that they lack intelligence entirely. It means that they don't have the ability to know what needs to be done to achieve liberation and what does not need to be done in order to achieve liberation. There are plenty of stories of animals who have achieved liberation. Many of you who've been around have heard the stories of the 16th Karmapa who loved birds, and they'd come and he'd sort of whistle to them and things, and then they would meditate. And there are some birds that even achieved the death meditation, so that they died and then they hung on to the branch in meditation for several days before they fell off after dying. In the life stories of the 13th Karmapa, there's a wonderful section where he talks about the 13th Karmapa was, because of the political situation in Tibet, he was not able to travel around and benefit humans so much. So he would go and meditate in the mountains, and the rats and the marmots and the crows would all come over. And there are lots of stories about him teaching the Dharma to the crows, speaking to them the way St. Francis spoke to the animals. There's a very cute story about him helping fashion a meditation belt out of a piece of grass so that a rat could sit up straight in full lotus position while meditating. This would be something that'd be very good to translate into English, make like a book for. Anyways, that's animals. So these three, that means, so the text continues. All three of these have no conscience and no sense of propriety, so their mind streams or their beings are not suitable. Because of this, they have no opportunity to practice Dharma. So that's the other thing that especially if you look at your intelligent dog, as soon as they smell some other dog in heat, they're going to be off and running. They don't have a sense of propriety or of conscience. So this lack of that prevents them from practicing the Dharma. Then we also have the long-lived gods. So the next says, the long-lived gods are the beings in the conception free, because they're the engaging consciousness and the engaging consciousnesses and their associates have all ceased. So this is something that is probably totally incomprehensible to you. The conception free is a particular level of existence. It's one of the areas of what we call the form realm. So there are people who achieve a meditation called the conception-free absorption in this lifetime. It's a meditation practiced in Hindu traditions, where the 6 engaging consciousnesses, that means the 6 consciousnesses that either perceive or think about objects, cease. Not only do the consciousnesses cease, but also the mental factors that are associated with them cease. So there is no movement of mind or mental factor while you are resting in this absorption. So this is a type of dhyana meditation or of strong shamatha meditation. And the karmic result of this dhyana meditation is that you are reborn in the realm of the conception free, which is, to be specific for those of you who've studied, if you haven't studied this sort of below, this is a specific part of the fourth dhyana. So the 4th level of dhyana, the 4th level of form. So in other words, we have the desire realm where we have physical bodies, and we are primarily operating out, and we're primarily attached to desires. That's why it's called the desire realm. Then above that, you have the form realm, which are there are 4 levels of form realm, which are places you can be reborn if you have the 4 dhyana meditations. And among them, in the highest level, is this particular type of realm, the conception free, for people who have practiced, who have achieved that level of meditation where their mind and mental factors entirely cease. So this is a little different than the cessation of an arhat in that it's a defiled meditation. They're not totally free of afflictions. They have just temporarily suppressed them. But they suppress them pretty well. So when they're reborn in the conception-free land, they enter this absorption, and then they have no movement of mind or mental factors for many, many eons, an incredibly long period of time. And then at the end of this time, the propulsion of karma, the propulsion of the meditation wears off because they still have some, it's a defiled meditation, so it's not permanent. It ends, and at that point, then they arise from the meditation and are reborn in another realm, a lower realm, which is far more painful than what they were in. And the worst part about it is because they had no movement of mind or mental factors, even though they've been in this realm for eon upon eon, they have absolutely no awareness. It's as if they haven't been in it for less than an instant. So this is the state of conception-free realm. Because there is no movement of mind or mental factors, there is no ability for them to practice the Dharma. So that's the conception-free. So that's one explanation of the long-lived gods. Then there's another explanation. So because so as it says here, so they have no opportunity to practice the Dharma. Alternatively, it is the gods of the desire realm itself. So in the desire realm, there are also levels of gods in the desire realm. So these are gods. Generally, in the Buddhist scriptures, they're described as the Hindu gods, but it's probably also the Greek gods. There are said to be 6 levels of gods in the desire realm. The gods, the 4 great kings, the 33, and so forth, 6 great kings. We aren't studying Abhidharma, so I'm not going to go on to it too much depth. But they're gods who live in our realm in a slightly a better place. It's said that their heavens are on the top of Mount Meru, wherever that is. And it's hard to say, of course, right now, because we don't have the karmic ability to perceive Mount Meru or the heavens, but they are said to be in the realm. So it's kind of like saying they're on the top of Mount Olympus. In South Asian, it's like saying they're on the top of Mount Meru. Wherever that god realm is, there are these gods who live in these realms, and then in realms and palaces in the sky above that in 6 different realms. And they have, compared to humans, they have incredibly long lives, millions of years. As it says here, in comparison to humans, these gods have long lives. So that is another type of god. Alternatively, all gods lack leisure, because they are so attached, to temporary pleasures and do not have time to practice the Dharma, or practice virtue. So these are different. This phrase, the long-lived gods, is the way it appears in the sutras, but is not specified in the sutras what is meant by the long-lived gods. So there's these various different explanations that are given in different texts as to what we mean by long-lived gods. There are other explanations that I shan't bore you with, because we've got to get through more today. So therefore, this temporary this bit of suffering that we have in the human realm actually has qualities, because we grow weary of samsara, our pride is subdued, and we develop compassion for sentient beings. So being in the human realm, where our lives are kind of short, only, traditionally we say 100 years. And that's not certain. It could be anywhere from 1 day to 100 years, and these days up to 111 or 112 or maybe 120 if you live for a long. But there are qualities to it. And the qualities are as described in a quotation from the Entering the Way of the Bodhisattva, which reads, "Plus suffering has benefits, weariness dispels arrogance, compassion arises forth samsara, shunning misdeeds, you delight in virtue." So the fact that we experience suffering in this world makes it possible for us to practice the Dharma. If we encountered no suffering, I mean, you all look at the reason, look in yourself and see what is the reason why you came to this Dharma center. Why did you start looking for the Dharma when you first started looking for the Dharma, whether it was, a few months ago or 20 or 30 years ago? Why did you first look at it? Why are you interested in practicing the Dharma? If it's to make yourself happier in this life, even if you don't feel like there's anything particular wrong, but you just want to be happier in this life, that's still wanting to get away from suffering. It's because there is dissatisfaction in our lives, if not out and out suffering. And for many of us, it is actual, real suffering that brings us into the Dharma. I mean, most Westerners who come into the Dharma because we experience something go wrong in our lives and we need something to help us at that time. That's suffering. That's a benefit of suffering. And also, it's because we know the suffering in our own beings that we can then understand the fact that other sentient beings have suffering. We know what it is like to experience pain, and for that reason, when you see an animal struggling and writhing in obvious pain, you can understand that they're in pain. When you see another human who's in pain, you can understand it. When you look at someone outside who is unhoused in Portland in the winter, and you think about what is it like for you when you're stuck outside for an hour unable to get inside, and these people have nowhere to go in the winter, and you can feel compassion. So understanding your own suffering is incredibly important, because that is what gives you the ability to understand the suffering of others. So suffering has benefits, experiencing your own suffering, and it decreases your arrogance, because if you never suffer, then there's a real danger of getting quite arrogant about it. And sometimes you might see this in people who have very blessed lifestyles, shall we say, in this world. And there are people who don't experience much out-and-out suffering in their lifetime, and because they're totally unaware of any other type of the subtler types of suffering, they're quite arrogant and they have no idea about what's going to come to them, although it will happen to them someday. So we shouldn't we shouldn't look down on such people. We should understand that they're going to experience even worse suffering because of the loss of what they have. Okay, so to continue with the text. So in this way, the beings in these four realms have no leisure, are explained to have no leisure. Even if one's human, even though they're human, the barbarians have difficulty in meeting great beings, and so therefore, because they have that, they also lack leisure. So it's like to think about it in a different way. If you, basically, Maine, New England. I should say New England because I'm from New England. Maybe some of you from other parts of the country, but let's just use New England for right now. If you're born in New England 100 years ago, you weren't going to encounter Buddhism. Maybe some educated people had read about Buddhism, but the way they read about Buddhism was, presentations by 19th century theologians. You weren't going to encounter it in a way where people could practice. That didn't happen to people until like the 1970s at the earliest, and it's taken a while for it to spread, and it still hasn't spread that far. So, if you were born in Portland 100 years before, or 150 years ago, you would have had no opportunity to practice the Dharma. So the word here, the Tibetan word lalo, we usually translate as barbarian, but it doesn't necessarily mean a barbarian in terms of someone wearing furs and carrying big sticks. That's not what we mean by barbarian. It means someone who's living in a place where they can't encounter the Dharma. Maybe in some fantasy novels they call them outlanders. I don't know. It's the original meaning of the Greek word barbarian, right? Not the meaning of barbarian as people who are, shall we say, barbaric. It's the meaning of barbarian in terms of people who just aren't in a place where they can contact the Dharma. Those born when there are no Buddhas, those born in a world that is devoid of Buddhas, have no one to teach them what to do and what not to do. So if in our world, we have humans, but there's also, the Buddha has appeared in this world Because the Buddha appeared and taught, you should do this, you should practice virtue. This is what virtue is. This is why it is virtue. This is not virtue. This is why it is not virtue. Because the Buddha taught this, we can actually know, we can understand. Otherwise, if you are in a world where no one teaches you that you should give up killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and the others of the 10 non-virtues, then people will do it all. We can even see, even when people are taught in this world, they still don't give them up. But if there's no one to teach you, then it's even worse. So if you're born in a world where there are no one to teach you. And then the last one are the dumb, because they are unable to stand on their own, unable to understand on their own the Dharma that teaches what is good and what is bad. Now here when we say the dumb, this traditionally would mean people who are deaf-mute, but also people who are unable to understand, who lack the quality, people who are, as it's phrased, not so delicately, not politically correctly in the Torch of True Meaning by Jamgon Köntrul says. The dumb also means, as we would say in Kham, idiots. And what they mean by idiots is, again, it's not something of being good or bad. It means people who are unable to understand. In the old days, and in Tibet, and presumably also in ancient India, they didn't have schools for the deaf. They didn't have places where people who had challenges, like that, would be able to learn. There are plenty of people who are deaf and unable to speak, but they have quite a capacity to learn. So nowadays, because there's sign language and people can communicate, and presumably you can also teach the Dharma in sign language, although I don't know of any particular program that does it, but it certainly is possible. People in that level who have an ability to communicate do not lack that leisure. But if you're in a situation where there's no sign language, or you only have rudimentary sign language, where you can't really communicate sophisticated thoughts, which is, I think, what a lot of people who don't have a large deaf community or sign language community to participate in, they have no opportunity to practice the Dharma. It's really, they have all the other capacities, but they lack the ability to have anyone communicate the Dharma to them. And so for that reason, this is considered one of the 8 states that lack leisure. And I wish, maybe someone can help me at some point, and you don't have to interrupt me right now, but if there's a better word than dumb that we could use for this, because it's not a question of lacking intelligence. Although there are other lists of the 8 lacks of resources that also include those people who lack faculties. Some of them replace the dumb with that, people who don't have all their faculties. So that would include the blind, the deaf, people who don't have any sense of smell. Or, well, I don't know if sense of smell would make a difference, but primarily people who are blind or deaf. And in particular, people who lack full mental faculties. So people who are, what do we say nowadays? Intellectually disabled people. Okay, thank you. I'm not following enough. So intellectually disabled people would also fall into that. So people who just don't have the capacity to understand. This is, again, it's presented as a source of compassion, not as a source of anything, as someone whom we should have compassion for. And of course, if there's some way we can possibly contact them, we'd do it in a minute. It's like with the Gyawan Karma, the various Karmapas and animals. They did everything they could to communicate with animals. And if there's some possible way to communicate with any sentient being who seems to lack it, I'm sure that a Buddha or a Bodhisattva would find it and then communicate to that being if there's the right opportunity. But in general, it's more difficult. So this is talking in general terms, not the specific terms. There are other stories of animals who went to the Naga spirits, who would go to receive teachings from the Buddha, and they practiced the Dharma. They had some obstacles and some difficulties in practicing Dharma for various reasons because of being born as Nagas, but they were able to practice some. So just these are not like 100% can't practice the Dharma. There are stories of gods who practiced the Dharma. There are stories of people in the hell realms who just out of some miraculous thing were able to, practice the Dharma or have virtuous thoughts, even though it's generally impossible. So these are not blanket statements saying these are totally hopeless people, give up on them. Instead, the way we should look at it is that we have an advantage We have the ability to practice because we are in this situation where we have the ability to practice the Dharma. So those are the eight leisures. And next we have the 10 resources. And the 10 resources are the resources are the 5 inner resources and the 5 external resources, or 10. There's 10 in some. So the 5 internal resources. Literally, the word is your own resources, but it's like the one that come from you internally on your own because of your situation. And so these are, as it is said, being human, born in a central land, having all faculties, your actions are not wrong, and you have faith in the right place. These are the 5 inner resources. So the first is being born human. So Khenpo says of this. Of these, being human is having the same fortune as humans. In other words, being able to speak and understand, and having the faculties of a male, having the male or female faculties. So you have to be a male or female and born human is what it's traditionally said. So that's what we mean by human. Then a central land, being born in a central land means that you are born in a place where born in a land where there are great beings. In other words, born in a place where people teach the Dharma. Having all your faculties means not being deaf or dumb, having the fortune to practice the virtuous dharmas. In other words, this is very similar to the last leisure that we spoke about. And having faith in the right place. This is a kind of idiomatic. I like this translation. Faith in the right place. It's faith in what you need to have faith in. Faith in the right place is having faith in the Dharma Vinaya taught by the teacher and in all the positive dharmas. So in other words, you have faith in the Dharma. You have interest, you have faith in the Dharma. This is important because if you don't have faith in the Dharma, you're not going to be able to practice the Dharma. If you instead have faith in some, human sacrifice cult, just to be a little bit silly about it. But if you have faith in a human sacrifice cult and you want to practice human sacrifices, that's actually going to be the wrong type of faith. So the human having the faith and having faith in the right place. So the external resources, literally the resources from outside of yourself, is that the Buddha has appeared in the world, has taught the Dharma, that the Dharma is still extant, that the Dharma remains, that the Dharma teachings remain, and the Dharma that there are people who follow the Dharma that remains, and that there are others who have compassion, that there are those who have compassion, love and compassion for others. In other words, this last one, those who have love and compassion for others, what it really means is that there are people who support you, who support people who are practicing the Dharma. Because it's really hard to practice the Dharma if you don't have support. And this is one reason why a lot of people remain in lay life, is because you don't know how to support yourself. How would we support otherwise? But in many places where there are where there are Dharma practitioners, the people who are really devoting themselves to practice are supported. Like in Tibet, often the families will send children off to become monks or nuns and then support them while they're monks and nuns. They have faith and they understand that it's virtuous to support monks and nuns. They realize that Dharma teachers need support too, and they make offerings to Dharma teachers. People will travel, the monks and nuns in Tibet will travel around. They'll spend a few months every year traveling around the areas, or at least they used to. I don't know what they do now. It's probably a little different now. They used to travel around for 3 months every year collecting donations of butter and sampa, and they'd bring it back and they'd lift off that butter and sampa and maybe some dried yak meat for the rest of the year. And so this is how it happened. In the Theravada countries, they go for alms every day. And so this is the monastics that have always been supported by the lay community. Likewise, there are lay practitioners who are supported by people who have faith, people who go on to retreat, who are supported by the people around them. So there are people who are willing to support people who are practicing the Dharma. And this is important. traditionally there's kind of a distinction between the people who practice and the people who support, kind of lay monastic division is sort of like that traditionally. I think they kind of became more and more so like that over time, perhaps. I don't know if that's really reasonable to say, but in any case, it's kind of like there's the idea that the lay people support the monastic community, although it's really not that clear. What it really means is that people who have resources can earn a lot of merit. They can take a share in the practice of people who they get a share of the merit of the people who are practicing. When you, as lay people who have incomes and ability, if this is your situation, if you support people who are practicing, people who are in 3-year retreats, monastics who are devoting themselves to listening, studying, and meditating, if you support people who are practicing the Dharma, then when they achieve a result, that you also get a share in that merit. Like Milarepa said in his aspiration that all the people who supported him through his many years of meditating, because there were people who came and gave him offerings, even especially after he started wandering, receiving teachings. All those people who supported him, also they made a connection so that they would all be able to awaken to Buddha together with him. And so there's a great source of merit to supporting practitioners and to helping other beings. So it's really important for people in your situation who have, I don't know what you are, even if you can only give $5, a little bit helps. Even if you can only give one meal to someone who's devoting themselves to Dharma, whether they be lay or monastic, it's not so important, but it's really important to help other people. It's a source of merit for you. In particular, the monastic, we have lost the traditions of monasticism in this country. It used to be very strong in the Catholic tradition. So people look at monastics, and frankly, when people think of monastics or priests, I think they are more like to think about various offenders of various kinds, unfortunately, these days, because of the actions of a few. I don't know the proportions, but there are the actions of some that have turned people off from monasticism. And that's, it's very unfortunate. It's not a situation of all monastics, but of some. And a lot of people have kind of a little bit of and there's almost an antipathy towards monastics in some communities. When you speak to some lay people, it's not everyone, but there's a little bit of and I think perhaps it dates back to the time of the Protestant Reformation and all that, when one of the problems was the status of the clergy in the European society. So we've got this difficulty in our society where people don't see supporting monastics as being as important as it is. But the teachings of the Buddha have remained for 2,600 years, primarily because they've been preserved by the monastics primarily. It's not that there haven't been great lay teachers, it's not that. It's that the bulk of the things, the people who have done the scribe work of copying texts before there are computers, the people who have taken the time to go through study and practice have by and large been monastic throughout history. And so it's been the monastics who have really preserved the teachings of the Buddha so that we have them today. If there had not been that monastic tradition, then who knows what would have happened to the teachings. Like with our Kaiju teachings, it's Dokpo Rinpoche, it's Khenpo who established the monastic tradition, and it's since then that they've been able to kind of like be systematized. We have very little left of Marpa's works. Marpa was a great translator, and there are very few of his works that are left. Very few of them are contained. There are only 4 volumes in his collected works, only 4 volumes, and he was a great master. Milarepa, we have collections of his songs. He didn't keep anything. When he passed away, there was just pretty much nothing left except for a piece of cloth, a knife, and a cube of sugar. That's all he left. But Khenpo, he left a lot behind because he established the monastic communities that have flourished and preserved the teachings and developed over time. And then the Karmapas and the great masters and people like Khenchen Trongrim have preserved them for us to the present. So there's a great benefit to supporting the monastics and monasticism, whether you do it by supporting, our Trangu monastery, of course, I'm from Trangu monastery, supporting Trangu monastery in Nepal or in Canada, or whether you do it by supporting the local monastics, the people at KTD, for example. In particular, Western monastics, other than people in my position, I'm in a very unique position for many reasons. So I'm very well taken care of. If you want to support a monk or nun and you have limited resources, I suggest you support some other monk and nun than me, because I'm well taken care of. I'm serious about this. There are people who need it, who have real problems, because they're people who they have trouble finding a place where Westerners who go forth and become monks and nuns out of great faith and devotion, they have trouble finding a place where they fit in. You're dressed in these funny robes and you feel like a space alien. If you don't have a real home base the way I do, it's hard. So it's very difficult for Western monastics. So supporting Western monastics is really, really beneficial, and it's a great source of merit for all of you. And it's important for us as Westerners, because we do need to preserve the monastic tradition in this country, even if it's never going to take off to the level that it did in Tibet or in Thailand or other traditional Buddhist countries. It's important to have it. They're very important teachings for the Buddha to be there. In other words, and also, of course, if you are able to help other people who are going on 3-year retreats, there are people who want to go on 3-year retreats who aren't able to save up the money that you need to go on a 3-year retreat. I don't remember how much it is, but I know that a few years ago that at KTD, it was like you had to have $25,000 for a 3-year retreat. And for a lot of people, that's a hard sum of money to come up with. I mean, you guys know, you know better than me, because you have to actually pay your bills. So it's not easy to come up with that sum of money for someone who wants to do a 3-year retreat. So supporting people who want to do 3-year retreats, supporting people who want to pursue Buddhist education, whether lay or monastic, is really important. But especially supporting monastics is very beneficial, in order that other people may have this. Because if none of us do this, then no one's going to have this fifth of the 5 external resources, right? We want to make sure that that's not just us who have the external resources, it's everyone who has the external resources. You might think to yourself that you don't have to worry about it because you work and you do your Dharma practice in your free time, or you've got some money saved and you don't need to do Dharma practice, that you don't need to worry about it. But you would never be able to get any teachers, because all of the teachers depend on people who have faith. And there are teachers because you have a lot of people who study, and a few of them get to the level where they can be teachers. So it's really important to support, and it's a great, we practice generosity, and generosity is important. So we do need to do things to help people in our communities. We do need to do things to help the downtrodden, the homeless, unhoused. I have trouble. We do need to do things to help the people who need food, who are poor and hungry. We do need to help people, and even people who look like they need help in some ways may need help in ways that you don't see. So to help people in our community is very, very important. But we also have to remember that generosity, giving to the 3 jewels, and in particular giving to the jewel of the Sangha, is very important for preserving the teachings of Buddhism. And if we don't preserve it, forget about it flourishing here. That's basically. Anyways, where did I get to in the text? Yeah, so in this way, these 10 internal and external, those who have these 10 internal and external have the perfect resources, have the perfect resources. Okay, so perfect resources means that you have the ability to practice the Dharma. Oh, there's so much more to say. So someone who has the leisures, both the leisures and resources, has the precious human body. So what's important here with the precious human body is to remember that not all humans have a precious human body. And something very interesting that, if you think about it, there's one set of instructions on Mahamudra, the Mahamudra preparations by Sri Sengdak Rinpoche. So I'm not so familiar with his work, but this is a quotation that the Gyawan Karmapa and several of his assistants found. And it talks about how there are actually 5 different types of human birth. there is the precious human body, which is where you have all 8 leisures and 10 resources, the precious human body. And then there is the mere human body, where you're human, and you can talk, but you're not capable of doing a whole lot more. You're just human. That's a mere human body. A third type is like a common human body. Common human body is someone who is born human and is able to, has some skills, they're able to do some things, but they don't necessarily have the ability to practice the Dharma. Then there is the class of unfortunate people. These unfortunate people are the people who spend all their time doing negative actions, who don't have any sense of propriety or shame. They don't have any sense of any conscience. They continually commit negative actions. They fight and they quarrel, they steal, they engage in sexual misconduct just all the time. And forget about using this precious human body to go on a path to the higher realms, let alone Buddhahood. They're headed down, like a rock that's heading down to the bottom. So that's the unfortunate human. And then the last type is the distinctive. The distinctive means those people who have the 8 leisures and 10 resources, but sometimes they do great virtue, and sometimes they do great unvirtues. They mix them. And because they mix the virtues and the unvirtues, they are unable to really make use of their precious human body with the leisures and resources. So this could also be called someone who is wasting the leisures and resources, someone who, or where the leisures and resources are meaningless or pointless. Someone who has them, who could make use of them, but doesn't. So what's important here is that we need to think to ourselves, are we actually making the most of the opportunities we have? This is why we need to meditate on the precious human body. We have to realize that we need to make use of the situation we're in. And if we don't make use of this, it's going to be hard to come to such a situation again. It's hard to get a human body. Hard to practice the Dharma. It's just the fact that we're here is so totally almost random in the karma that brought us here. Now that we're here, if we let it go, when are we ever going to come to these again? It's as it says in the 4th verse of the Way of the Bodhisattva. I've gained what is so difficult to get, the leisures and resources to benefit beings. If I do not accomplish good while here, how will I ever come to them again? So we need to keep this in mind. I often recite this verse to myself. I find it really helpful. Just recite it over and over again, the 4th verse. And if you just recite it to yourself over and over again, it really helps you remember. If I don't accomplish good now, what's going to come to me next? Okay, I have to continue with the text a little bit, otherwise. Thus, the precious, both the leisures and having both leisures and resources is a precious human body. Why is it called Rinpoche? Or why is it called precious? Because it is similar to a precious wish-fulfilling jewel. It is difficult to find, so difficult to get, so it is precious. It is very beneficial, so it is precious. So again, the wish-fulfilling jewel, I mentioned this the other day. It's the jewel where, the Universal Emperor puts it on the top of the staff, and you ask it for everything, and it gives everyone in the kingdom, everyone in the empire, everything they need or want. And so it's precious, it's rare, there are not too many. And it's of great benefit because it gives you all you need and want in the worldly realm. So the Dharma, or the precious human body, is like that. So, as for being difficult to get, from the Bodhisattva Pitaka, the basket of the Bodhisattva, this is a particular scripture which reads, becoming a human is difficult, gaining a human life is difficult, gaining the true Dharma is difficult. It's also difficult for a Buddha to appear. It's just hard to get it. If you look at it, we haven't got time to go through all of it. When you do, then if you read the Torch of True Meaning, the first chapter, or the first chapter of the Words of My Perfect Teacher, you should really read those frequently. Very helpful texts, both of them. They give reasons why it's so difficult to become a human. Basically, the main reason is that most sentient beings rarely act on virtuous thoughts. Even if you look at humans, you look at yourself. Of all the thoughts you have, how many of them are actually virtuous? How many of them are neutral, and how many of them are negative? I don't like this. If I have to do this, this is a problem. Blah blah blah. This is mainly what we're thinking about, and then we act. I don't like that. I need to do something about it, and then you act out of that negative thought. How many of us are actually thinking, I want to do something virtuous? How often does that happen? Unless you really train yourself well, it's hard for that to happen. So that's why it's so difficult, because it's because of our thoughts, and our thoughts and intentions lead to our actions, and our actions lead to the results of whether we're going to be able to be in a situation where we can practice the Dharma or not. And it also says from the Avatamsaka Sutra, the Sutra, the White Lotus of Compassion. It's difficult to find a human birth. It's difficult to find the perfect resources. It's also difficult for a Buddha to appear in the world. Wishing for virtuous qualities is also difficult to attain. It's difficult to have the correct aspirations. From the Gandavyuha Sutra. There are different translations of the name of the sutra. There's a very good translation of the sutra on the 84,000. They published it under the name the Stem Array Sutra, which is a very, very literal translation. The translator wanted to just use the Sanskrit title, Gandavyuha Sutra. I think it's called like the Miraculous Array Sutra in another of the translations. At any rate, what it says, it's a wonderful sutra. So you should look on the 84,000 website and read it if you have time. I'm giving you lots of reading. You got a while before I come back, so there's a lot of time for you to read. It's difficult to find freedom from the 8 states with no leisure. Becoming a human is also difficult. It's also difficult to get the pure, true leisures. It's difficult for the Buddha to find a Buddha who has appeared. It's also difficult to not have incomplete faculties. It's difficult to have the full faculties. Hearing Dharma teaching, hearing the Buddha's Dharma is difficult. Being with great beings is also difficult to find. It's difficult to find, or true spiritual friends are difficult to find. It's difficult to find the practice of the true ways. It's also difficult to find a good livelihood. It's difficult to find people in this human world. It's difficult to find dharma that accords with the true dharma. So it's just difficult to find any of them. Any of the situations, if you can take a look at it in this country, there are many things that people do. There are lots of spiritual things that you can do in this country, and among all of them, how many people are actually able to come in contact with Buddhism? Most people come into contact with some sort of spiritual tradition or religion that encourages them to do things for the sake of this life, encourages them to make them do things. You go off and do shamanic things and whatever. And mostly it's to kind of like feel better now. To think about doing something that will actually make you capable of benefiting other sentient beings, it's very difficult to find traditions that do that. There are so many. If you look at all of the websites and things that are talking about spirituality and so forth, they here's an example. There was an app, a meditation app that was started by a Theravada teacher, and he kind of made it open, and it started out as primarily being teachings by him and some other Theravada teachers, and then slowly someone else put something, then they started putting up the sleep yogas, and they started putting up this tradition, that tradition, like this healing, blah, 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 blah. And so now, if you look at the content on that app, There's probably one, I haven't looked at it for a couple of years, but the last time I looked at it, you can still find genuine Dharma teachings on this app, genuine Buddhist meditations on this app, but it is like just overwhelmed by the New Age. Just totally overwhelmed. And it's not that New Age is bad, it's not that these are bad, but it's their focus is limited. So if you're getting on the app to want to learn how to meditate, the chances are you're not going to come into contact with a Buddhist teaching on meditation. You're going to come into contact with some other teaching on meditation that may use similar techniques, but the focus, the intention is different. They're not thinking about liberation, they're not thinking about bodhicitta, and therefore the way they teach is different. The goal is stress relief now, right? Or look at what happened. You had if you want to learn about meditation in general in this country, it used to be that you had to go to like a Buddhist center. This is Buddhist or some Hindu centers, yoga centers. That's where you'd learn meditation. Well, now what do you have? You have mindfulness-based stress reduction, which is not bad. It's good. But this is what people get for meditation. And it's a little bit like yesterday I was speaking about Mingyur Rinpoche's joy of living or the Trungpa Rinpoche's Shambhala levels as a way to get people in. But the mindfulness-based stress reduction may to some levels bring some people to Buddhism if they hear about the connection. But most people are just doing it for medical reasons. And it's not going to bring them into the Dharma at all. So this is how it's happening. Even if you want to find teachings on a spiritual tradition, to find ones that really are Dharmic is difficult. We can just look at the situation that we're in. So we have to really appreciate the fact that we have come in contact with a Dharma, that people like Trungpa Rinpoche came and they established places. They taught us the Dharma. They came and they taught us the Dharma. And many of us in this room had the opportunity to meet Trungpa Rinpoche and receive teachings from him many times. And this is just, we should be so fortunate. And now we don't have that ability to meet Trungpa Rinpoche, not in the same form, because he's passed away. We still have the opportunity to practice the Dharma, and if you have faith, if you have some devotion, if you have openness on your own part, the openness that comes from faith and devotion, there will come a time where you will be able to connect with some teacher who will be able to guide you. I mean, hopefully, since we're a Trungpa monastery thing here, one of our Trungpa teachers, whether Chögyal Lama Wangchuk or Tulku Tamcho or Dungse Lama Pema or whoever, that you're able to make a connection with someone. But there are other great teachers, even Lama Lodra or whoever, who also came last year and may well come this year too. So there are other teachers who will be coming, and you may be able to make a connection where you feel a lot of faith, and that's excellent. Even people who have studied with Trungpa Rinpoche in the past, now you still need people to give you guidance, people to receive teachings from. And so if you take teachings from the various other teachers, this is excellent. But it's difficult, and we're in we were in a situation where Rinpoche came to Maine every year for over a decade, wasn't it? From like 1997 until 2009. He came pretty much every year. And it's been a long time since he was able to come. Now, some people were able to go see him for a few years after that, and now he's not here. So it's difficult to find genuine spiritual teachers. And when you have the opportunity, we have to take advantage of it. We have to really practice that, take the opportunities that we have. So it's to continue from the text, as it says in the way of the Bodhisattva, I've gained what is so difficult to get, the leisures and resources. So he gives a partial quotation. We've gained the leisures and resources. And so they're difficult to find. So what is an example of how difficult they are to find? What analogy is there for them to be difficult to find? What type of individual are they has difficulty finding them? What is the reason why they're difficult to find, you may ask? Regarding that, of those, the analogy is from the way of the Bodhisattva. Did I put this one in here? I made a list of all these. Oh, I didn't include this quote, so let me see if I remember it. Therefore, gaining a human body is as difficult as as for a turtle to stick its neck through a yoke that's tossed upon on the oceans, as the Bhagavan said. Sorry about that. I should have written down the actual translation beforehand. And this is so it is. So where this is taught is in the true agamas, in the true scriptures, the scriptures of the Buddha, where it says, if this water would become, if this great earth were to become water, and there is someone threw a yoke with one hole with one hole on the ocean that were driven in the four directions by the wind. And there was a blind turtle that would surface, that lived many thousands of years, and so forth. So this is the example that he's given. So the full example is that you have the oceans, the broad oceans, and there's a single yoke that's blown by the east wind to the west, and by the west wind to the east, by the north wind to the south, and the south wind to the north. And it's always moving over the ocean. And there's one blind turtle who surfaces every 100 years to take a breath. And so what are the chances of that turtle surfacing at the same moment and sticking its head through that yoke? Very, very difficult, right? Very rare. So that is the same as the chance of gaining a human life. So and so forth. So Gampopa doesn't relate the whole story in here, but that's pretty much pretty much it. It's described a little bit more wordily in the sutras, but that gives you the gist. So in terms of the individual, those born in the three lower realms, it is difficult for those born in the three lower realms to gain. And what is the reason why it is difficult? It is because the body, with its leisures and resources, is achieved because of the cause of accomplishing virtue or accumulating virtue. And those born in the three realms do not know how to accumulate virtue and always act only on misdeeds. So when you're born in the three lower realms, you want to get things, and so they're always constantly trying to get things from one another, and there's a lot of fighting and conflict in the three lower realms. Therefore, even if you were born in if you were born in the three lower realms, it is only those. Therefore, those even if born in the three lower realms, those who have less misdeeds and who you need someone who has, those who are born in the three lower realms but have less misdeeds and have accumulated karma that is experienced in other lifetimes can gain it. In other words, once you are born in the lower realms, you aren't accumulating any karma that will allow you to be born in a human realm. It's only in a previous life as a god or a human that you've done some virtue that wasn't strong enough to be reborn as a human in your next life, but was going to ripen in some lifetime in the future. It's only if you've done something like that, and then the causes and conditions come together for that to ripen, and then you're reborn as a human. Other than that, it's very difficult for animals or hungry ghosts and so forth to be reborn as human. So here we have gotten through the section on the reason why it's so rare. The next part is about why the precious human body is so beneficial, but I think I'll leave that for the afternoon. At this point, does anyone have any questions? Yes, Peter.
Two questions. First, about the new translation of the Vajra lineage prayer about awareness or non-distraction being the body of meditation. And then, please grant your blessings that I understand there is no meditation. I get a sense of that, but could you say a little bit more about what that means?
Okay, so this question is for those listening online. In the short Vajradhara prayer, where in the last line, I'll read the last line from the prayer, just that we all have it exactly that. In the third stanza of instruction, the instructions on shamatha, where it says, "Please bless me to be free from thinking there is a meditation." So, could I speak more about what that line means? So basically, the problem that this is talking about is that when we want to do shamatha meditation, it's important for us just to rest whatever happens. As it says in the previous, whatever is occurring, you just maintain without being distracted. You don't try to make the meditation into something good. You aren't afraid or try to correct it if it's bad. You just rest being aware of what is happening. That's the fundamental state of meditation. It takes a while to get to a point where you can do that, and so you have to use techniques to get to that point. So really, when you're resting in meditation, if you are trying to make it be some specific meditation, that's why we used the scare quotes there, like meditation. You have some idea, this is meditation, then you're trying to make it into something. You have this conceptual idea of what it is. Instead, what we want to do is just let the mind naturally settle. Just let it settle. Let it be as it is, not changing. If there are thoughts, there are thoughts. You just don't let the thoughts distract you. You just don't get distracted by the thoughts. If the meditation is good, you don't get happy. It doesn't matter. If the meditation is bad, you don't try to make it better because it doesn't matter. You just rest in whatever it's like. And so really what you want to attain is, what you're looking for is just to remain non-distracted. So maintaining your mindfulness and your awareness and just resting. And you rest for a short period of time, and then you stop. Because you rest for short periods many times. Even if you may be sitting here in meditation the whole time, but you rest for a period where you can rest as long as you can maintain it without getting distracted. And then you break your meditation before you would get distracted. So you have some control. Purposely. Instead of letting your meditation wander off and then coming back, you meditate for a length of time that you can meditate for. Then you break the meditation, and then you think, I'm going to meditate, and then you stop. And then you just rest. You be mindful and aware. You don't make it into anything, whatever it is, and then you break it. Again, so you do this, for a period of meditation, you might break it up into several chunks in order to keep it nice and fresh. But you're not trying to make it into anything. You're not trying to do anything to the meditation. You're just letting it be. Let the mind naturally settle, however it settles. And it doesn't matter if it's meditation. It doesn't matter if it's not. What matters is, are you distracted or not?
Also, if I may, maybe for the benefit of new friends who might not have a guru, someone they think of as their guru, how would they apply devotion? How would they have devotion?
Okay, well, this is, you've got something that you connect with. So the guru doesn't necessarily have to be living. If you, for example, were receiving these teachings on the jewel ornament of liberation, and Khenpo himself said that reading the jewel ornament of the liberation is the same as meeting him in person. So if you feel enough devotion for Khenpo and you pray to Khenpo, then even though he's not physically present here because he passed away in Tibet, 900 years ago or 800 years ago, even though there's not that physical presence, you still can contact his teachings, still receive his blessings. If you come here, and we're a Tranggu center, you hear about us speaking about Tranggu Rinpoche, Khenchen Tranggu Rinpoche, the 9th Khenchen Tranggu Rinpoche. Even if you haven't met Tranggu Rinpoche, if you have faith in Tranggu Rinpoche as being your teacher, you can still receive his blessings and be able to practice. And then, of course, there'll be other people, the people in your local Sangha here, and you have people such as myself or Dungzai Lama Pema or Lama Lodra who will come and help you teach you and give you guidance in what we do. And of course, we'll try to do whatever we can to guide everyone. And so if you have that faith, you'll be able to receive the teachings. Sometimes people go looking for gurus and they try to look and they never find one. They look and they look and they look and they look and they look. And so the Gyalwan Karmapa has spoken to this at least 2 times that I remember. And what he says is it's actually not a problem of them not finding a guru. It's a problem of them not having enough faith. So if you don't have enough faith, you have to develop faith even before you have a guru, because if you don't have faith, there's no way that the guru is going to be able to contact you. Faith is like, I guess, it's kind of occurring to me as I'm speaking, it's kind of like when they talk about openness, and like you hear this a lot in Shambhala lingo, they use the word openness. It's like, you have to be open. If you're not open, then the guru can't make contact with you. So if you're always wondering, who's my guru, and you're not developing just faith in the teachings and the faith in the gurus who have been around, then you're going to have trouble finding it. So if you look at all the people who come and teach you here as being your teachers, and this, for myself, think about like my robes as being your teacher, not me, because I have no qualities. But if you think about my robes as being what I represent, as being like a representative of Trungpa Rinpoche. If you think of all the teachers as either being representatives of Trungpa Rinpoche or the Karmapa or whoever, or you think of them all as being teachers, like when you have, especially if you invite Tulku Damcha Rinpoche, Chuje Lama Rinpoche, or Lama Lodra, they're genuine good people who can teach you the Dharma well. And so you can think of them as being teachers. Whether they're your root guru or not is not important. The more you have faith for the people who come and share the Dharma with you, then, and even the more you have faith in the people within the group who have been practicing the Dharma for a long time and share the Dharma with you, the more you have faith in people like that, then the more you're going to be open, so that if there is an occasion where it turns out that one of those people is not your root guru, then when you do meet someone who could be your root guru, you'll be able to contact. So developing faith in all the people who come and teach you. You develop faith in them not because they are perfect people, because they're good people. We all have faults, and if you get to know us, you'll know our faults better. It's not the human, it's the fact that they're able to teach Dharma in a way that you understand, that you can practice, that you can put into practice, and that is what you need. So especially right now in this period when, Rinpoche passed away a year and a half ago, and so we are in a sense bereft of like the person who has guided us in Trungpa Monastery and the Trungpa organization overall for a long time. If we think that we're all lost and then let this all go and chase off in other directions, it's not going to work. But if we maintain this, we keep it going, then we'll all be able to eventually come in contact with something that'll work for us individually. And it'll also maintain this group so that we can, it's really important to maintain what you're doing and have pure view. Keeping the group going, having pure view of each other, and being open to all the Dharma teachings is really important. And, that's what you need to do. If you view all people who teach you as being your teachers, then that is the way that you'll be open enough so that when someone who comes who is your teacher, you'll be ready for them. Yes?
I have another question. It goes back to meditation.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the aim was to quiet your mind.
Oh.
Okay? And so that when you say rest in whatever thoughts come, right? I get that. But then what's the distraction? I thought the distraction was the thoughts.
Okay. So the question is, for those of you listening online who may not have heard, regarding meditation, the questioner thought that the point was to quiet the mind. So the question is, when the thoughts occur, aren't the thoughts themselves the distraction? Essentially. So the point of meditation is not to quiet the mind. The point of meditation is to get to a point where you can see the mind. You can see the nature of the mind. In order to see the nature of mind, it's most helpful at the beginning to see it when it's resting. So in the beginning, we do things that help us rest the mind. We do practices where you count the breath, or you might use like a visual support, like put a pebble or something in front of yourself where you can just see it and look at it. But anyway, use a support for your meditation. There are many different stages of shamatha that are taught, and I'm sure that I know that many of the other people here have received some of the same teachings on all of this as I have, so I don't need to go on to it in detail right now. But really what we're trying to do is just let the mind relax, no matter how it is. So when a thought occurs, the thought occurring is not a problem. And in fact, if we think to ourselves, I need to have a peaceful mind, and if I try to stop that, it doesn't work. Mingyur Rinpoche speaks about this very eloquently. You can't stop the mind, and it just doesn't work. So what we try to do is that when thoughts occur, you are aware of them and mindful that you are just resting, and you don't follow them. So this is why the basic instruction is, don't chase after thoughts of the past, don't invite in or don't usher in the thoughts of the future. Just rest in the present mind as it is without altering it. So when you have thoughts that come up, they're generally going to be thoughts about either the past or the future. So when you think about the past, there's nothing you can do about it. So that thought comes up, and you can even remind yourself, Trungpa Rinpoche mentioned this, you can think to yourself, it's the past, I can't do anything about it, I'm meditating, I'm just going to rest. Then you go back to your meditation. In other words, you apply your meditation, your mindfulness, and just return to your meditation. When you have a thought about the future, it is important to plan for things at some point, but you don't have to do that 24/7. And you in particular don't have to do that while you are meditating. And so when a thought of the future, I should do this next year, I should do this, that, I should go to the Bodh Gaya next year, I should do this in my meditation in a minute, I should do this or that in the future, even if it's only a second from now. You don't follow it. You don't usher that thought in. Instead, you just rest. You let it come and you let it go. And then you just rest. And it doesn't matter.
I think I've had a real change after doing Vajra for a while.
Yeah.
When I get through and dedicate, I sit there and I'm so quiet that there's just nothing there.
Yep.
Then little things start creeping in.
Okay.
So then I was like,
okay. Yeah. So
go back to the quiet.
okay. So what you should do there, what happens there is that then when you're quiet for a while, that's good. When the little things that start coming in, what you should do at that point, in order that your meditation doesn't get corrupted by those little things creeping in, what you should do at that point is when you should get up. Like you dissolve Vajrasattva into yourself at that point, when the first thought arises before another thought can arise, then you recite the dedications. So you flip to the end of the book and you recite the Gedi Do and your Dorje Sim, and whatever that dedication prayer at the end of the Vajrasattva is, right? Then, at that point, if you want to go back and do some more shamatha meditation, then do it at that point. Do the shamatha meditation. But make sure that after dissolving the visualization, you rest. When the first thought occurs, before another thought occurs, you recite the dedications so that is clean. Okay? So it doesn't get corrupted. And then you can do more meditation later if you want to, that's fine. There's nothing wrong. But make sure that you're keeping that meditation after dissolving clean. Okay. Maybe that's enough for right now. I don't know if we'll have time for more after lunch, but we better break for lunch so that we all have time to get lunch. So let's recite the dedication of merit. O sanam de tham je se bani Tomne nye beranam pamchete Keganachi ibala trubam Ai Sipetsole drova sho. By this merit may we attain omniscience, defeat the enemy, wrongdoing, and tree. All wanderers from the ocean of existence, churned by great waves of birth, age, sickness, and death. Anena punyena tu savadarshittam avabhyandrijudya tu dosh vidvisha chararujya mrityu mahormi sangulat samuddareyam bhavasagara jagata bhavatu sarva mangalam.